which I was actually just practicing your piece earlier, and it's been really really great to study the score and start to put things together.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you're getting to know it because it's such a that piece is such a different for me it's a different take on just like trying to convey a particular message. So it's one of those things that when it came up when you asked me, I'm like, how am I going to convey this like super emotional idea of you know of a perspective, because like my parents are both of my parents are immigrants, or they were immigrants. They both became naturalized in the 90s. Um, and it's like having to write music from that perspective, but also be like, what is it for what's the perspective for children, specifically, like, what do they see? Like, how do they see this experience as opposed to like, you know, everyday folks, like adults that are traveling and doing, doing, going through the motions of doing the travel, right? So it's like that's why like when I was writing it, I'm like, how do I convey this, this thought of like the idea of going plus the emotions wrapped up with all of the different decision making. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That and
Yeah.
I feel that throughout the piece of there kind of being like the sense of wonder in like I think of I'm thinking of the kind of mixed meter. I know you mentioned it being kind of this, uncertainty, but there's also some of these passages that they offer. They're kind of those like singing lines where you're like, I just feel like they're full of wonder and maybe a perspective of, an idealized perspective, and then that's always put against something that's just a little bit, you know, unsettled. I'm thinking of um I don't have measure numbers here. I can pull it up, but the
Yeah.
give me 1 second. I because I was here we go. This part. Is it maybe measure number 91 where it's da da dum da da? It just doesn't feel like it's going where your ear might want it to
Yeah.
go, and I just feel like those are the moments of like you know, you could have taken comfort here, but then maybe the reality isn't as ideal as you might think. So I really like those moments where, you know, it's nice to be beautiful on the flute, but then that subversion of the expectation and being like, "Whoa, what's happening here? I'm confused." Happens.
Yeah.
I enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why there's certain ideas like when I was like that particular passage, I was listening to a friend of mine because he was getting ready for an audition. He was playing the Dance of the Seven Veils, and there's that literally that lick that goes down, ba-da-da, 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 and like it goes down like through the entirety of the range of the flute. Um, and I remember Jean Baxter's book says something about like talking about exoticism and conveying this very oriental like device when it comes to the composer's idea. So when I was writing this, I was thinking a similar thing where it was like it feels uncertain because as we're going, like I feel like whenever I hear it, it's just like it doesn't even that piece. It doesn't feel like it goes somewhere. It just kind of it feels very improvisatory. Like he was just okay. I'm just gonna end. It feels like it's not a part of the core thematic material that is in that particular movement of the piece. So when I wrote that part, that's what was the idea that I had in my head. I'm like, how can I convey this? Like, okay, like it's just like a circle thought process. It's like you keep thinking about like, okay, is something going to happen? Like, what's the next? What is the next outcome? And that's why like it returns to that kind of like weird like like measure 92 with the piano. It has that the 16th note thing that I stated in the beginning.
Hmm.
And it's supposed to feel like there's familiarity, even when you feel like you're lost in a way. Um, and that's why like it go like that whole section dovetails into the Measure 97 and Beyond, where it quotes America from West Side Story. Um, a little bit more stylized, but yeah, it's that. And the reason why the piano is marked mezzo piano and the flute is marked piano is just it's supposed to be like, like the idea, right? Like in like an innocent idea of what it is to be in this place that you think you're gonna feel so secure in, right? So like what does that look like? So that's why I wanted to quote that particular piece. And even though it's not the same chord structure, just having that that melody was I don't know, I just felt like it was like the perfect choice when it comes to like a piece like this because it's about the journey. It's about like the idea of the journey and whether or not it's like and it's really ambiguous. You can say that this piece is the it's either the journey itself, like the actual journey, or it's the idea in someone's head of the journey, and they're already calculating what are the perils ahead that are coming. See
Yeah,
what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah,
yeah, and I absolutely love that. And I think another thing that I really appreciate about the piece, and when talking to you during the process of commissioning it, is and hearing you now, even with the Dance of the Seven Veils, of how many kind of sources are being kind of drawn from, inspirations are being drawn from. And I think that's also really representative of who we are as a people, as a community. We have this mix, this mix of different cultures. So I think you mentioned Up, the soundtrack of the movie Up, some was in there. um um America from West Side Story, Dance of the Seven Veils. I feel like there's a lot of um, different things coming together, um, that all kind of speak to that idealism versus what's happening, what dangers am I facing. So I really appreciate that about the piece. um, uh, Looking here to the question, so we talked about how it represents it could be representative of that, like, contemplation before the journey. And I think that's something that's maybe particularly difficult for us to imagine. For example, I know you mentioned that your parents were both immigrants before being naturalists. I'm very similar. My dad, who this commission was originally about, crossed the border. And my mom also came here, immigrated, and they were both naturalized. And so, being in our position, to imagine that, to kind of look at the story, that's kind of what I imagine to be a folk tale almost. Hearing about my father's journey and then putting it into something like this, it really feels, I get that sensation of folk music from it. At least that's my interpretation. I know. What would you have to say about that?
yeah. I think there is definitely a folk quality. My writing tends to be very cinematic, and it may come off as improvisatory in a way. And it's true about all of my compositions. I don't know if I told you I wrote a requiem for orchestral requiem in 2022. It was premiered and it was dedicated to people who had passed away in a fire that was in Oakland, California, called the Ghost Ship, and it was an artist warehouse space. And I've had people tell me that they have had um, certain themes in the piece feels either like like a ethnically like folkloric piece, like I had a cello player one time who was reading the cello part, and he's just like it feels, something about this feels very like uh, tribal, raw, just whatever feelings are coming up, it feels like a very indigenous feeling. And that's been part of my identity, like as a flute player. I always identify myself as the Chicano flute player, right? So and it's been my identity as a musician. So I actually has talked about this and I made a post about this on my TikTok and I said that who I am as a composer and the things that are important to me, human rights, social and civil rights, are part of the makeup that make my playing because I'm always trying to work with people who want to highlight our stories and highlight our family stories and their family stories. So these are sensitive topics for me. So that's why like a lot of times I'm very unapologetic of what I say and how I say things. So it might rub people the wrong way, but I think it's important for me to be authentic in a art form that it can be very white dominated,
Mhm.
um, and and even sometimes can be a little racist because I've encountered it. I know how that feels, and I've seen it on forums, public forums, on Facebook and whatnot. So, um, and even in real life in some of the ensembles that I've played, but I think just going back to the relevance of this piece, it's just that's my writing. My writing has always been a fusion of my experiences and whatnot. And so, like, right now, I'm also writing a symphony that is based on the things that I heard growing up as a kid. So, like, it's called Buenas Canciones, and it's literally like a an adventure of the different sounds that I heard growing up. I grew up in the Mission District in San Francisco, very brown, very immigrant at that time. Now it's very gentrified, unfortunately. But and I laugh at it because it's just like, you know, San Francisco is always talked about like being this very inclusive city, but it's just like seeing the gentrification happen and the many people who live there and make created the culture that was, uniquely Mission District, which was the indigenous people that were living there, the black and brown people. Those people really made that place the mission. Um, and so the symphony is literally a dedication to that. It was my journey as a kid going to church and what my church experience was, and I talk about how like music and religious institutions are places where the community gathers, and then there is the second movement is about the different sounds I've heard, different musical tastes, just different musical ideas that I have developed as a composer. And the third movement is a love poem. And then the fourth movement is a celebration of life. And it's all of the big festivals. It's hearing the mariachis play. It's hearing the cantantes do all their different songs and the rancheros singing. It's just like it's a love poem to my upbringing. And so that's how, whether or not I apologize if I went off into a little bit of a tangent, but that's how I explain my composition process. I take influence from a lot of different places, cinema. Um, Joe Hisashi was a big influence growing up, so his music has a big relevance. Video game music from Nobuo Uematsu, um, and the like Alan Silvestri is another composer who just made my life like amazing, and I get emotional listening to his music. And yeah, so yeah, you'll see like if you look at my other compositions, you'll see that there's a very cinematic, very orchestral way of approaching, even with like small pieces like this.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing that. I think one of the core goals of Quiénes Somos is to really highlight the role that the Latino community holds in the United States. And like you mentioned, you know, black and brown people and indigenous people, we are a lot of the times our communities come together to to be the tastemakers, to create culture, to which is often, you know, co-opted and gentrified. um but we a lot of the times we contribute so much to the general culture. And so this project aims to highlight the Latino community's role in the United States and how that's indispensable, and more, even more than that, the role of the immigrant. Because um, as I mean, as I know, living my whole life with immigrant parents, is the work that they put in and what they do is contributes immensely to the communities around. So with that in mind, is there anything that you would want to say about the immigrant community that, you know, you grew up in and around, and or to the community at large, as a representative, um, for the Latino community, and what your music can, I mean, I think in a way your music speaks for itself with its message, but if you had something to say for it, or as a representative of it, what would you say?
Um, a friend of mine described my music as moments um, of healing. Um, he described a couple of my pieces like he's like they're you tend to be very meditative and very kaleidoscopic with your music, and it represents a lot of. I think there's a lot of vulnerability in it. So much like our community and the immigrant community is right now, we're very vulnerable, especially currently with this administration and the with the ICE raids going on, the unwarranted and unjustified treatment of even U.S. citizens, um, of brown U.S. citizens. It's just one of those things that you just look the part and you're just getting pulled over. I'm hoping my music it can at least be a temporary sanctuary for healing. Um, I just want people to feel and understand the message that I'm trying to convey with through my music. And in this particular case, it's the journey, or it's the thought of the journey, and understanding that uh, sacrifices are not easy. Um, I've heard stories of uh, friends who have crossed the border that are living here now, who are still waiting on their appointment to become naturalized, or they have been naturalized, or they're not. And I shall not name names to keep them safe, but they they've told me stories of their struggle, and some of them did it on their own. They've had families pay for people to cross them, into the border, and then to struggle. Like I heard a story about uh, someone that I didn't know, but it was just kind of a friend of a friend thing, and they told me that they crossed through the Arizona border, through Naco, and uh, and they were really, um, I mean, like the person literally they just dropped them off like right outside, and he was just like, I didn't know what to do. My gut instinct was just to find a safe place and then try to make it to another safe place and another safe place. I don't know what that looked like, but I just needed something. So I want people to understand that, like, sometimes you hear this thing, especially right now within the Republican Party, especially the conservative Republican Party, about well, why don't they do it the right way? They are one. A lot of them have done it the right way, and they have been denied, or they're waiting. They're still waiting on their appointments to become naturalized, or sometimes they don't realize they don't have the resources. They don't. You know, some of them are. There's literacy challenges. There is lack of information. There's the word of mouth. Oh, mi primo this, mi primo that said this. It's super easy. You should do it this way. And so it's not. It's there's always something you need to consider because, the right way might not always work. It might work for you in your ideals, but it might not necessarily work for someone who is struggling to stay alive. And then wherever they're living might not be the most safest place for them to be, especially those of us who are within the LGBTQIA community, um, and that are living in places where they aren't allowed to be who they are. And so that part even more is a thing that I think about quite often. Um, I do have a buddy who he came here, an expired visa, overstayed, but he works his butt off, and he contributes to the success of the country. And something I want to say, and it's been true to my heart, and because I read and I know history, America was not built by white men. It was built by Black, brown, and Asian people. Everything that we have, it's because of them. It's because, you know, history has taught us that great nations are built upon the backs of slaves and cheap labor. So, and it continues to be that, right? Because you still have people who are undocumented working on construction sites and in your restaurants and cleaning your hospitals and your homes and taking care of your children and literally developing the things that a lot of people take for granted. And I think I think now, especially right now with this administration, we have the opportunity to use music as a tool to convey what our voices don't necessarily can't really do as well. Um, or if people don't have a voice to speak, they can use music as that form to project it, like Shostakovich did with his music. And every time every time I listen to it, and every time someone said we're going to program Shostakovich, I'm like, that man wrote the best political FUs in all of his statements. I mean, and there's so much vulnerability, and I think yes, he's a white man, but there's so much relatable content in his music. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like um, I think we need to be playing, and even in ensembles, we need to be performing more music by people who look like you and I, who look, the Valerie Colemans. Uh, we need to have more representation out there. We need to uh, show that we're contributing both, people who are first or multiple generations here in the United States and immigrant music, um, because that's how we develop. That's how all of what we have, music, fashion, everything, is either due to a person who looks like us or a person who doesn't fit heteronormative standards. And I can go on. I'm telling you, I can go on about this.
No,
I can rant about
and
this for days. But
I totally
yeah,
agree. I think as musicians, and even more than that, like zooming out as artists, I've always been of the thought that it falls on us to, I mean, if you look at the development of art in general and music, it booms during these tumultuous times because I think it's our responsibility to say something with our art. It's our responsibility, it's our burden to bear to not have our art be some frivolous thing. You mentioned Shostakovich, and the heavy burden, the danger that was to his life because of his protest within his music. And I think right now more than ever, yes, it's nice to be a flutist and like I'm gonna go for my orchestra auditions, and it doesn't discount the aspirations we have on a professional level, but this type of project, I think, really, I would really love to empower voices like yours, like the other composers that are going to be represented on this program, that our voices are meant to be loud, to be heard. We're meant to be seen, and we're meant to say something, especially because we get to have the privilege to be relatively safe compared to the people that we're trying to protect. You know,
Yeah,
so at this moment, I really do like think anyone who's on our side but is quiet is a coward and is not really on our side. You know,
yeah,
so this project is all about different communities coming together. It's not about just we want the Latin American community to come and be in our audience. We want everybody to come because unity, you know, as many of us come together, we all can protect and defend each other. And that's what we need. You know, right now we're in a country that is massively divided, and I think that's to our detriment. As much as we disagree with other sides, you know, I think by design we've been pit against each other because we then if we're not united, we can't see the real issues. The you know, you mentioned before how people were how a lot of conservatives say that, oh, well, they should have done it the right way, which negates kind of this whole idea of there's something structurally wrong. If the right way is not working, is not being taken, is not available, then there's just something missing to begin with. Um,
yeah.
so that basically, thank you so much for sharing your ideas and your music with us. Um, just to end this interview on this note, if I asked you the question, "Quién eres?" You know, can you soy? You know, what would you describe yourself in one word? Soy.
Uh, my two words would be unapologetically me.
Thank you so much. And you know, that's all we need to be. We need to be ourselves. We need to not shy away from the voices that try to subtly tell us that, you know, well, it's not about this, it's not about that. This is just music, this is the orchestra, the microaggressions that we face. And in some cases the macroaggressions, you know. Um
Yeah, and I'll just say just real quick, just before you end it too, because I know we only have a little bit of time left. I just want to say that, you know, as a message for musicians and composers that look like us, and just folks, BIPOC musicians and composers, like just keep being authentically you. Like no need to change yourself to fit a mold or to conform to anybody's ideals. Because you know this is a field where we're constantly conforming to perform things in a very particular way, in a very set way, and that's fine and dandy, but continue to be yourself even within those parameters. Like you don't have to change who you are as a person and what you believe to fit someone else's ideals of what musicians should be. That would be my message to BIPOC musicians and composers.
Thank you so much, Arturo, for taking the time to speak with me today. And um, I just think it's wonderful that we get to work together in this capacity. And I really want to do your music justice. And you know, it's at this point. Oh, it's today. It's today. It's 2 months away. Exactly 2 months away. So the
Yeah,
countdown is here. The grind is up to get everything ready. And just thank you so much. And I'll keep you updated as things keep going.
sounds good. All right, take care. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.